Resiliency Within, with host Elaine Miller-Karras, is brought to you by Trauma Resource Institute, Incorporated. Visit traumaresourceinstitute.com.
Welcome to Resiliency Within, featuring your host, Elaine Miller-Karras. In unprecedented times, our beliefs and well-being are put to the test. When we take the things we've learned in life and look at challenges in a whole new way, we learn to develop resiliency, which can then be used to promote healing and personal strength. Now, here is Elaine Miller-Karras.
Welcome to Resiliency Within. I'm Elaine Miller-Karras, and I will be your host today. And I am so happy and excited to have my dear friend and colleague, Melissa Boley, with me today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Welcome, Melissa. Welcome.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so glad you're here all the way from Idaho. But this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I want to say a little bit about mental health. It's a growing area of focus in 2026. Individuals are experiencing more anxiety while also resolving to focus more on their mental health, with access to mental health care being a top priority. So our Americans are expressing greater anxiety about personal finances, the cost of fuel, and also because of current events. So anxiety, depression, and co-occurring substance use disorders top the list of mental illnesses prevalent in U.S. adults. And barriers to mental health services continue to be a challenge, with more than 120 million people living in underserved areas. So access to mental health service is really important, and we need to continue to work on that as a nation. And in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm really honoring the work of Melissa Boley. So Melissa, don't turn red on me here, but Melissa Boley was recently honored with the 2026
I won't turn red.
Award, award from the Idaho Counseling Association for her 36 years of work in Idaho as a licensed clinical professional counselor. Melissa's going to share her wisdom with us and insights from her work and her international travels, her experiences in Idaho and in the outdoors. I've learned a lot from her about how the outdoors has also influenced her career. She has been an outstanding leader in the importance of bringing in somatic awareness in psychotherapy, including the trauma resiliency model, the community resiliency model, and somatic experiencing. She has her undergraduate degree and a master's in counseling psychology. And she's worked in diverse settings, but she's also worked in rural America, which I think is really important for us to highlight today. And so she's traveled with me to Nepal and the Philippines. She's also been to Serbia with the models that we espouse through the Trauma Resource Institute. And many of you know that they're the sponsors of the show. So Melissa, as we're getting started today, what is on your mind?
Well, today I am traveling to see my son in Bozeman, Montana, and he's just moved there, my son Tate. And so I'm thinking about the road trip. And I'm excited to go through West Yellowstone and drive up there and just get into the open areas of Idaho and Wyoming and Montana. And also be here with you, Elaine.
I've always admired about your husband, Tom Boley, and yourself is that you are very much outdoor folks. And I love the way that you've incorporated your healing work too with being on the outdoors. But let's start with, we have a few questions for you. So you just retired. In fact,
Okay.
it was a year ago, May, that you retired from this amazing psychotherapy practice. And because I've had the honor to be at your home, to do trainings with you, I've seen your passion for your work, your kindness, and your really way of being with people in such a lovely way. So what are some of the insights that you'd like to share with us today?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, that's pretty global because
Yes.
it's been so long in mental health, right?
Start with wherever you want to start.
Yeah, I think that neurobiology changed my whole career. And when that came on the front, it got me fired up again. because many things, working in the wilderness for 6 years with Outward Bound, also being raised pretty much at an all-girls boarding school from 14 to 18, not because I was a delinquent, but because I was allowed that opportunity. They switched to a block system, which was modeled, CC modeled their school, their college after the block system, which is you study one subject for an entire month and no other subjects. So what happened with our school is that we became very experiential in our learning. And I'll never forget how my grades improved with learning through experience instead of learning rote. And I was in a class called Justice. This is what changed my whole career. And this is one of the insights. And it's weird retiring too, because I've been downloading all these different things. And one of them was, what started it? Well, this class called Justice. And my teacher, Roy Grimm, started it. And we basically I went to school in Colorado Springs, and we went to the courts every day in the Colorado Springs court system and looked at the docket and picked a trial we wanted to see that we were interested in. And the first one I picked was a woman that had been raped. So I sat in a rape trial at 16 years old and watched how that went. I also picked one where an adolescent girl had become violent with her mother, and she was being charged. And so that set sort of the mental health track, both of them. And then after we did the courts, we went to a maximum prison. And there were 6 of us in this class, all girls. And we took a tour of the prison and had lunch with the prisoners. And I don't think that would ever happen now. And I was so nervous. I remember my lunch tray, I just moved it through the line at the cafeteria, and I moved it too fast. And the guy whapped some mashed potatoes on the floor, and he goes, "Nervous?" And I'm like, yeah.
I've never been to a prison before like this. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
It was a little wild. I was 16 years old. Then we went to a women's prison. It was totally different. The women were riding bicycles around campus. They were allowed to decorate their cells. They had a beauty salon. They could take continuing ed, do a lot of stuff. More freedom. Then we went into detention centers for adolescents. It was incredible. And so at that point at 16, I knew I either wanted to be a lawyer or go into mental health or go into sociology also. Or anthropology. I was sort of like combining all these things. But that class was the stepping stone. After that, I began to get into wilderness therapy because my dorm parents both were into Outward Bound. And at our school, we learned from Outward Bound. So we spent 23 days in the wilderness. We would climb up a wall as a team and do all these things. So really the Colorado Springs School and it was for girls then, now it's co-ed, set my track. And doing wilderness work with people that paid to go on these trips was life-changing. It was life-changing for me as a student. I went at 16, and then I started working logistics for Colorado Outward Bound, and then I became an instructor at 20. And then it led into, I had to make more money, and so I led into wilderness therapy, which wasn't that then, back in the 80s. They didn't have a term for it, but it was with incarcerated kids, and we'd get state contracts to take kids into the wilderness for 27 days into the North Cascades in the winter, all sorts of stuff. And when we did that, we being the organizations, it really made a difference with the kids. But there was one problem when they came back, because it was hard to integrate what they had going back into the settings that they came from. And so a lot of different programs started out of that. And I think what I'm saying is the insights were that I had incredible education growing up. I also went to experiential education colleges, Evergreen State College in Antioch, New England. And it was all based on learning through experience. So it taught
So
me
those,
to build out of the box and to think
well,
about,
and I think that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about you is that, thinking outside the box. And,
yeah,
we first met because we were both students of Peter Levine and we met each other through somatic experiencing. And I think that definitely was at the time because it was just starting up, really, um, 20 odd years ago that I think I first met you, that it was out of the box. People go, "What do you mean bringing the body into therapy? How do you going to do that?" Of course, and now it makes so much sense too as you explain your origin story, right? Because at 16, you're at a school where the experience is such a big part and outdoors is such a big part. I mean, going in the wilderness for 23 days, but I also think that convergence of the justice um, block that you did, what an amazing combination of experiences that really brought you into the field of psychology. It's really quite, I think it's so I think it's so important that we also have different ways that young people can learn. And I think sometimes our educational systems, like you said, I started doing much better in school when I learned things in blocks. Because sometimes the rigidity of some school systems don't appreciate how sometimes we learn differently and can actually expand and grow in ways that are unthinkable because we have different ways of learning. So I love that experience that you had. I wish we had that for more young people who could experience things in that way. So
another
when,
insight you
go
just brought
ahead.
up, Elaine,
Yeah.
is also the power of a group because I learned in groups. And in the wilderness, you have to be connected as a group and working with each other. You can't walk faster than the slowest person. You have to stay together. And climbing mountains, all sorts of things like that. I'm a mountain climber and a rock climber, and all those things rely on each other. And one of the things you mentioned is how we met. And it was through our friend Rob Blinn, and he was working in China. And you were coming to Idaho for the first time, and I remember I was asked by a fire department to do a training on somatic stuff and how it affects the body and all
Oh,
that.
right.
And I
Right, right.
connected with you through Rob. He goes, I know just the woman to talk to who's doing disasters around the world and who would talk to these guys just kind of, you know, about the body and all sorts of stuff. So I called you. And then you invited me into the training into Idaho. But that is grassroots. This is the connection that's so important that I'm very worried that we're going to be losing in the future.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm worried about it is that we're getting into technology big time now. And that changed the whole field for the positive and sometimes the negative. It had pros and cons. And I saw that through the career. So if we hadn't met, I don't think I ever would have had these experiences ever of going to
Well,
the
we certainly,
Philippines and disasters and all these things and teaching crim and trim all over the place, Idaho, Montana, meeting so many people. And same with somatic experiencing. I would travel to Seattle to do the work there. And it's a 3-year training. I did it in 2.5, but it's like, and then we all met at that big advanced training. And, you'd meet practitioners from all over the United States. And I still have those connections. And that was
well, and I think
hugely helpful.
well, I think that's important. We're talking about the field of mental health and mental health practitioners. How do we learn the different modalities that we bring forward to our clients? And as we go to conferences, we also learn that there can be a missing part when we're only talking to people about in a cognitive way what their life experience has been and what their trauma has been. And I think what brought Melissa and I together was our belief that in order to do more healing, we had to bring the body into the equation. So can you talk maybe a little bit about that in terms of How did you do that? What did you do with your practice? How did you change what you were doing when you learned somatic experiencing, the trauma resiliency model, the community resiliency model, all somatic based models? How did that
Well, I
change
first I
you?
first started with EMDR, and EMDR was kind of definitely a launch into the body-mind connection. And when they started scanning what was happening in the brain, that really verified, and the ACEs study verified that yes, trauma affected the body. It affected our physiology. The other thing with Peter Levine that appealed to me initially from all the wilderness stuff I did was that he had that question, why do animals in the wild not get PTSD when they're being attacked repeatedly? And he wasn't talking about domesticated animals, he was talking about wild animals. And because I spent so much time in the wilderness, I understood that piece. And I was like, wow, that's an amazing question. And he came up with the deer analogy, and you know this, Elaine,
Yes.
but
Well, why don't you share the deer analogy? Because maybe people that are listening may not know what that is.
yeah, it was like, and we had to watch so many animal films. Remember that? And I
Mhm.
remember I loved The Wild Kingdom when I was a kid, and so it was like
I'm
perfect.
not surprised that you like
Yeah,
the Wild Kingdom.
welcome
Yes.
to the Wild Kingdom. But I remember Peter talking about a deer, and this is so important because I think we're losing this as society now with all the technology. I'm biased in this way. But if a deer hears a noise in the wilderness, what do? And they stop first. They assess the danger. They orient. Is this a log falling out of a tree? Or is this a predator? And how do they orient? Well, if you look at the deer, you'll see they're still, but their nostrils start flaring. They begin to have their ears turn. Their ears actually can turn in many directions. So they're focusing on hearing. They're focusing on smell, because many times with predators, you can't see them, especially when I went to the Amazon. That was wild. You can't see what's in the woods, but you can smell. They also are very stiff in their bodies in some ways because they've activated behind their Achilles tendons, their backs, getting ready for flight, just in case something is
The
happening.
mountain lion, right? Just in case it's a mountain
Right.
lion trying to get them.
But they
Yes.
don't go yet. And what if they go, oh, it doesn't have a smell. It's not moving anymore. Then what happens is, what Peter explained, is that the animal then starts doing this little bit of trembling. It kind of shakes a little bit, and it's not a conscious thing. It starts happening, releasing all this energy that was flooding with them, with their hormones, and they just release it. And then after that, they go to calm and soothe, and they go and eat. Animals can't eat if they're under threat. We can't eat if we're under
We're
threat.
under threat.
Yeah, so that made a lot of sense to me. And that's how I began getting hooked into the neurobiology thing. And how I used it with clients was, one, learning how to externally track was really important. And what that means in layman terms is watching somebody as they're talking about their experiences, whether they're positive or negative. Are their eyes getting more sparkly? Are they getting big smiles about big experiences they've gone through that were really positive? Are their bodies more relaxed? I'm watching all those things externally as the person begins to talk to me. And then I'm also watching if we touch on a little bit of the issue of why they're there. Maybe it's a trauma thing or something. I'll watch the shift. Is their jaw getting more clenched? Are their eyes getting more narrow? Is their body getting stiffer? And then what do I do with that? That's the next phase.
Yes.
Then I start talking to them. As you notice, and this is one thing you taught me, Elaine, and I think that that's where neuroscience changed too, because we went from,
Mhm.
what's wrong with you? I loved that model that you put up that one time. Yeah,
Yes.
in the slides. We went from what's wrong with you, which I saw when I worked with crisis residential in Seattle for a long time, kids coming in. We basically did behavior mod. And back in the day, with kids that were acting out too much, it was medication. And trying to get them to fit into the norm. So if they did this, they got some Hubba Bubba bubble gum,
Okay, right. So
right?
so I think what you're alluding to is like I brought into the equation what is right about you. What are your
Right. So the next phase was, well, the other thing was what happened to you?
yes.
That happened in the 80s. Okay,
And that
what
was the
happened to you?
trauma-informed perspective is what happened
Right.
to you.
So we had more compassion with that, but at the same point, cathartic therapy came about. Like people had to express this and get it out and talk about it and beat pillows and do all sorts of stuff. Okay. And have a catharsis, and then it would change. And that basically was nervous system release in some ways, but it
But it
wasn't
also
in
could do
other
too much
ways.
too fast too, right? Too much
Right.
too fast.
Right. And it could ingrain it like a album link, like a groove in the album more. Okay. So with fight, flight, freeze. So then I went through catharsis training and personally through that whole deal with lots of groups and lots of things. And I found it ingrained it more in me and it didn't really settle it.
Yeah.
And then what came about, Elaine, as you said, which was great, is what's right with
Yeah.
you. And this is the thing about noticing the positives, noticing when someone starts settling into their own being and they're feeling like when I see that, there's more congruency, there's an ease, there's less inhibition with someone when they can settle and just be what they were born with. And that is the
And I just want to
gem.
kind of, and that's the gem, is, and I think I want to highlight that too. That thought because it's not just about talking about a positive experience or saying, "Oh, I think I have this strength because I can climb mountains." It's like, "Oh, well, tell me about climbing the mountain." And all of a sudden you see someone's complete countenance change, settling into their chair, maybe a smile, their muscles relax. And so I
Right.
think the most important thing about somatic-based therapies is that we paid attention to that. And we help the
Yes.
client pay attention to that so that they could become the best. I call it now body literacy, right? That they can become the best readers of their own nervous system. Because then, with intention, and I think that's what we got so excited about, Melissa, we could see people be able to come into their well being and that they could continue to develop that. We call it the resilience zone or the zone of well being. But we could see that it changed people. And I think we both got
Yes.
excited about that.
And I got excited personally. I mean, with Peter's work, we had to do a lot of our own personal work. And my legs were so strong from running and climbing, and I was basically trying to complete the flight response, doing these activities, right? And all of a sudden, like once the nervous system settled, it was amazing. My legs got softer. They still had
Mm.
muscle, but they got softer.
But
So,
so your well-being was restored. I mean, if
yes.
the fact of the matter is your what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, if
Yeah,
you're always ready to take flight, your body has that tension in it. And honestly, some of us live like that our entire life
I
until
know.
we start connecting the dots and saying, "Oh, what if you just allowed yourself to move in the way that you'd like to move, or even imagining the movement in your mind's eye?" And then we could see the nervous system come back into balance again.
And
And
it's like the deer, and I know that we're getting close on time, but it's
yeah,
like the deer where the shaking or the nervous system release happens, and all of a sudden you notice what's happening now after that.
right.
And it's like, wow,
And so
things have changed.
it puts a different frame regarding physiological reactions that people have oftentimes felt shame and pathologized. So we're saying, no, that's what happens with the nervous system. When it starts to reset, you might shake a little bit. And that shaking, you might yawn, you might even sense your stomach gurgling. And all of a sudden, your nervous system has its rhythm back. You feel like you're in a more
Yes.
balanced state. And I think that when we saw that happening, and I think I started really getting even deeper into this work during the Iraq War that we had and seeing veterans coming back. And they would often tell me that they would shake in the middle of the night and they thought there's something wrong with me. Maybe I have MS. And then what was realized was that their body was releasing in the middle of the night. I said, well, just notice that release. Just let it happen. You don't have to stop it. Your body is resting and trying to reset as you're sleeping. That was a huge relief to them to know that could be. I mean, there's what was happening to their nervous system.
And again, getting back to animals, dogs do this all the time. They circle before they go to bed, and then you'll see them take a sigh. Usually they go when they've found the spot. It's kind of like grounding. And then
Yes.
they begin to twitch. They're like, right? And then they
Yes, they do
release. You
that.
can actually see them running with their paws. And then they release. And then in the day, they're just like happy little doggies coming up to you
Yeah.
again.
Well, that's right. They're just wagging
It's
their tails
just,
and coming up. It's so I think what's
but in
important.
modern society, and with our big frontal lobes and all that stuff, we do not take the time to allow that to happen a lot of times. We move on to the next thing.
And I think that's why
And so
with AI and technology, we don't want to lose the human connection and the human, um,
totally,
really the being able to look at someone in the eye, being present with someone and reaching over and holding someone's hand. So, as we're talking about mental health today, we're talking really about mind-body health, aren't we? And so
yeah,
we're gonna take a short break and hear from our sponsor, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll continue this conversation of different
okay.
modalities that help with healing. And I'm sure you can hear from both Melissa and I. We are big believers in somatic-based approaches. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
All right, perfect. We're all clear.
Thank you, Matt.
Mhm.
Melissa, we can go back whenever we want to. You need to take a stretch or bio break or get
I'm
a
fine.
sip of water. Are you doing okay?
Yeah. How's it going, do you think, Elaine?
You're doing great. Are you kidding? You're doing wonderfully. I love how you're bringing that in. Um, and it's so connected to your outdoors work and seeing those interconnections. I love it. So
Did you read
we
this
can,
speech? I'd love to end with the speech.
well, then you can say as much as you want about that speech. So
Yeah.
just
You
how
mentioned
many
curious.
minutes how many minutes do you need to say your speech?
Well, it was less than 3 minutes because Mike and I timed it. I read it to him. It was
Okay,
like, oh
so
my God.
what we'll do at about 7 minutes after when we have 7 minutes left, I'll say, I know you have some really important things to say.
Okay.
Um, Melissa, I really want to invite you to say it now. So I want you to go ahead and do that. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so when we come back, let's see. But I guess what I'll ask when we come back, Melissa, I'll ask you, what do new therapists need to do to be ready for the long term in the field, not to burn out? I
Yeah.
think having, your wisdom of your experience would be very important,
Yeah.
and how they can maintain their passion for the work. Okay, so if we could
Yeah.
say
And
that.
I'm still passionate. You can tell, Elaine, but
Oh, you haven't lost your passion. I can hear it.
no, but it's going to turn into other things, I think. I'm felting now. I love felting.
I
Do
don't
you
know
know
what
what
that is.
felting?
No, it is
You
felting.
stab wool. It's so therapeutic. Oh my God. Um,
Oh God, tell me
no,
about
you
it.
make it into little figures. And like in Europe, they have Christmas ornaments made out of felt.
Oh
And
my
it's
gosh.
that,
Well, you know what? I obviously need to come and make a trip to when you get back. I'm going to
oh
come up
man,
and gotta come
it's
up and say hello.
life-changing. I'm making
You and Rob.
fairies in the garden out of felt.
All right. Well, you have to take pictures. Okay, we're going to go back now.
Okay.
So Matt, go
All
ahead
right.
and bring us back.
Ready to go? Okay, I'll bring you back. Here we go. Live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back. I'm with Melissa Boley, retired psychotherapist. We are here because we're talking about mental health. And we also realize that mental health is really mind-body health. And Melissa and I met years ago regarding our kind of shared passion for bringing in the body into psychotherapy. So we've been talking about that. And I wanted to kind of segue, though, into another topic. Melissa was talking about the importance of just being present with the outdoors and, observations of animals and how that also helps us as human beings to realize that we can release some of the energy of the trauma that's in our body by just even noticing releases that happen. But the other thing that I think is important as we're talking about mental health is how do psychotherapists maintain their mental health? And with your over, almost 40 years of experience, Melissa, what would you like to say about how we can do that as mental health practitioners or any of us that are in the healing arts?
Well, there's a few little tips. Be curious. One of the things you mentioned, Elaine, was being curious and asking people, what is it that you love about the wilderness, Melissa? Right? And it's not, it's really being curious about people, each being that you meet, just really holding presence. I think that's a piece that is, and I can go into it later, but we're losing it in some ways as a society. And it really is concerning. The other thing is be creative. Don't just realize that you have your own canvas and you can put whatever color on it that you want. So it creates
Well,
expansion.
well,
And
I'm thinking about, can you say a little bit about your hula hoops? Because when
oh
I
yeah.
met you with hula
Oh
hoops, I was
God.
going, no, I never thought about
Okay.
hula hoops being therapeutic until I met you.
Well, yeah. I was asked by the oh God, what's that big conference? Now I'm losing it. In DC with family therapy. I was asked to come do a hula hoop seminar, and I couldn't figure out how I'd get over 100 hula hoops on an airplane, like or how I'd even build them. But
Yes.
hula hooping, this is a curiosity in me. Like I had a friend from California that came up and said, Melissa, it's amazing. You can lose weight. They're a little bit weighted, and you can become one with the hoop. And I'm like, I can tell you live in California. No, one with the hoop. What are you talking about?
You're going, I'm
And
a
she
girl from
goes,
Idaho. What are
no,
you talking about? That touchy
yeah.
feely stuff.
But
Yeah.
she taught me to like if you hoop to the right, to step to the right and turn around inside the circle. And what happened was there was a pause where it got slower as I moved around in the circle. And I realized this from a physics professor that I can't remember what it's called, but when two forces meet at the same time, it creates a pause. And that allowed me to set up for tricks with the hula hoop. Like it would give me a little bit of a pause and then I could move it above my head or I could spin around and do other things. So that connected the whole thing to me. Like there's more to this. Because one of the things with the body mind kind of stuff that we get into, Elaine, is a pause and how important that is to just take a little bit of time, pause it, and notice what's happening inside. And I could
Right.
do it with the hula hoop. So that got me going. And the other thing was the colors. I started designing colors that I loved, like Sun Valley Hoop had white, sky blue, and bright yellow, because those are the colors I wake up to every day in Idaho. The skies are like robin blue. The sun is always going, and we have a lot of snow usually. And so I made a Sun Valley special hoop. That was my best seller. So looking at color combinations, that's the creativity part. It was really fun. And then
Well,
I
and
started
also,
doing
can that's with
groups.
kids, with young people too. I mean, hula hoops is wonderful with children.
Right, but then I was asked by the Sun Valley Wellness Festival to do it with adults. So I got trained in San Francisco by hoop girls. And anyway, to teach hula hooping, because I couldn't just do it around my waist for an hour with a bunch of people. And so anyway, I just started getting more creative where I was like, okay, it's a wellness festival. Let's do hula hooping through your chakras. And I mashed it with music and like different areas of your body and going up above your head
Well,
to the
you sound
crown.
like you're from California now, Melissa.
I know, but this is the creativity. So getting
Right.
curious really has set a tone for me of, yeah, this is cool, but what's the deal with this? Why do people like hula hooping? I don't know.
Well,
Huh,
but
what?
also when I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, just the somatic base of your work and about how the body's so involved with hula hooping, I mean, I could just see it's another way that we can restore well-being and also develop a competency. And whether we're adults or children, that doing something like that can also be in that mind-body continuum of
Well,
healing.
I said it was the most modern anthropological tool of our century because it connected people to their inner child again. And
Yeah.
I had so many people come up when I had a demo area and I was selling them. I used to do that when I was a girl, but I can't do it. And I'm like, yeah, you can. And I give them a bigger hoop, which is also physics because it moves slower. And I'd give them, it has weight to it. And all of a sudden I'd see these women in their 70s going from I can't to I can. And then I'd see this
Yeah.
big smile. And I was like, oh my God, we got it. And I'd put music to it too. And music links left and right hemisphere of the brain. And
Well, and I'm so
it was
you're also using the paradigm of neurobiology to craft your creativity of how you were
right.
bringing hula hoops into your practice. So
And
I think that's
everything.
another thing I want to really emphasize when we talk about mental health. Again, we're talking about mind-body health, and it doesn't mean you have to sit and talk to a person regarding whatever problem it is. Sometimes talking is not what is the way that might be the vehicle for you to heal. And I remember talking to a woman from Florida, actually. I know that's where your mother lives part-time. And she told me that there was a therapist she was working with and she had terrible trauma. And she said, you're just gonna have to face the fact that I don't think you're ever gonna recover from this trauma. And she actually ended up becoming a psychologist. But she said what helped her was she went to a dance class. And when she moved her body, she started feeling some of the trauma of what happened to her start to leave by the nervous system releases. And that awakened something in her that she didn't know was possible. So again,
Yes.
those that continuum of the mind and body and thinking about other modalities. And as we're talking about this, it's really important for everyone to think about if you're needing to go to a counselor or a psychotherapist, is find out what kind of modalities that they do. Do they work with the body? I think Melissa and I would be strong advocates to say if the person doesn't bring the body into the psychotherapeutic intervention, you might want to look for another therapist that could, or at least in addition to, if you love your therapist who does traditional talk therapy, try to see if you can integrate some of the movement of the body into what you do, because it may make all the difference in the world. I don't know if you agree with that, Melissa.
It's beyond, yes, I do agree with that, Elaine, and it could be anything. It could be decorating. It could be like making a space environmentally that you love, like colors, all sorts of things. And it's the resource stuff that you taught. I realized too that with kids, kids really, I worked with children that were incredibly just, they had really big problems. I saw a shift from street kids of Seattle that were teen prostitutes to crack babies that couldn't bond. And we got them in
Oh,
residential treatment. And it really, when I worked crisis residential for a long time as a head social worker, I learned a lot about plan A, B, C. So getting back to what kept me going, because I had to switch it all the time. What worked for one kid wouldn't work for another kid. And I started with pickup sticks, which was so weird. In my practice, I used games a lot with kids to find the portal into that kiddo, because you can't just talk. You need to do things. So with my kids that were very impulsive, let's say, labeled ADHD or whatever, I would use pickup sticks and we'd play the game. And I had giant ones, big ones. And I realized through neurobiology, everything that I was doing had a purpose, which was, what do you do with pickup sticks? You look at a huge problem that's all glopped together. It's all chaotic, kind of all a mess. And what do you have to do? You have to take it apart one by one stick at a time. It slows you down. You have to look at the bigger situation and you have to pick one stick off and think about which one and how is it connected to the other sticks. These old games are so precious. Chicks and hens, same thing. That's an old game. But it helped my kids understand, stop, think, then act. Right? Assess. It also taught orientation. Orientation is a huge thing that we're losing now because everything's on a phone. And so Tom has the funniest story, which is my husband. He said he was guiding a group and a guy walked down and he was on his GPS on his phone trying to find the trail. And Tom was on the trail with the group and he comes down and he goes, "Where's the trail? It says on the GPS, I'm not on the trail."
You go, "You are on the trail."
Yeah, he said, "You are on the trail."
No
and the
matter
guy
what
goes,
the GPS says, right?
"No, I'm not on the trail." And he walked away and he just started going through the bushes. But this is what's happening. We're not having social engagement. We're not looking at each other. We're looking at the phone for our knowledge. And it's only one pathway. And that's the thing that I'm so adamant about now, is finding many pathways. And that's what kept me fresh. Many pathways, and to change your practice. If you have adolescents at home, you don't want adolescent kids in your practice. That would drive me crazy. If I had toddlers at home, I didn't want a lot of 4-year-olds in my practice. Okay, so thinking about that.
You adjusted your practice also with what was happening in your life.
Right.
In terms of what was helpful for you was not to have that in your practice, for example.
Right.
I think that's a very important part.
Yeah. So
the other thing
go ahead, Elaine.
Is to really be creative about thinking about how you can adjust your practice over time, because as your life changes, what you might want to do with your practice changes. So not to feel that you have to be stuck and this is the only way. And I think the other thing about you, Melissa, that I always loved, that I always love about you, is you're very youthful in your thinking. Is that, you might say, "Oh, well, I'm this age," but I'd say, "Well, gosh, you seem like you're 30 to me," but I know you're not 30.
Yeah, you know
they can't see how old you are. 30 plus 30 maybe. But anyway, but what I'm saying is that I think that also keeps you alive in your thinking and in your youthfulness in terms of what you bring to practice, whether you're working with a child or you're working with a teen or an adult, because I think that we react to that aliveness that I think I've always seen in you. But I want to say one other thing, and maybe you can talk about it. I remember one time being up in Idaho, we were doing a training, and one of the things I really admired about you, and this is about rural America versus where I live in LA County, and that you were a go-to person by many people. And that happened, whether there was an accident on the road where a teen that you already knew had died as a result of an accident. I remember one time being up there, someone had suicided, and you were the person that people called. It's like you had built such a reputation in your community that when there was a crisis, they came to you. Would you say that was true, or that was just kind of I saw it many times when I was with you?
Yeah, I think working in the wilderness, working in Seattle at crisis residential centers, knowing the community resiliency model and teaching it all over the state. And one of my things was seeing, I went to grad school on the East Coast and then I worked in Seattle for quite a while. I worked all over the nation, really. But anyway, when we moved to Idaho, and I grew up in Idaho, I realized that East and West are kind of the starters of new theories, and then it kind of comes to the Midwest, and then it comes into other areas, right? And so the cutting edge stuff was really on those two places of the United States for me. And learning the Milan family therapy in the East through the reflecting mirrors, that was a long time ago, but it was so cool because it was a rural model where there was a fly psychiatrist named, I think his name was Carl Todd. I can't remember exactly who he was, what his name was, but he founded this. And he would fly into villages and help families in their homes, which was so amazing to me.
Well, because
And it,
that's what you did in Idaho, right? I mean, you
yeah.
helped families in their
So,
homes.
so
So it
I
wasn't like
helped a
everybody
lot of
came
people.
to your office in your barn, um, and
Yeah.
said, that, but you would go to them. And I think so. I guess the other thing I
But
want to
it
say about
designed
that,
a systemic view for me. It
right?
wasn't just being the therapist in a rural community in my office. It was also like, what is their support system? What do I need to pull in and help with to get the whole scene together? And that's really came from working with children. Because if I wasn't working with the school system at the same time I'm working with a kid with behavioral problems, and I'm not networking with the social workers in the school, or I'm not working with the family, telling them what we're doing, or having mom come in the last 10 minutes of the session, or maybe the whole session, then I'm missing a bigger boat, which is the whole system of
Well,
social engagement and stabilization. And
well,
that's
see,
what I had to do.
and that's what I want to kind of emphasize what you're saying, because what I saw when I would come to Idaho was that yes, you were doing individual psychotherapy, but you did community psychotherapy because people came to you when there was a crisis because they knew that you looked at things in that way. It wasn't one on one, which of course is one way to do therapy, but it was really the family system and the community system because what you said earlier, and I really felt that I go, oh, I really got you when I went to Idaho and saw you with your folks. Because what you said about we have to be together because it's about survival. And you learned that when you were a kid with Outward Bound. But when you go to a remote area like where you live, if there's a huge snowstorm and you have to rely on your neighbors for whatever it might be, you really have to be so connected to a community that's different when we're always driving places like here in LA. It's a different setting. And I think that's another thing that why I wanted to have you on the show today was because when we think about the mental health of our nation and of people, we have to think in that broader overview effect that I think that you have done so beautifully in your practice over those almost 40 years until your retirement. And
Yeah,
that's
thank
always
you,
going to be
Lynn.
with you. And so I really want to thank you for that wisdom. But also, I know that there's some words that you've prepared today that you really want to express. So I want to invite you right now, Melissa, to bring that in to our discussion.
Well, I
Would you
have
do
to
that
I
for
have
us?
to read it.
That's okay. You can read it.
Okay, and then I
People
gotta
are
find it.
listening. We're an audio podcast on Voice America,
Okay.
so go ahead and
So
read what you want to
I want
say.
to say also, Lynn, just jumping off of this track, but thank you so much for showing me. I'm gonna cry because you are a big mentor.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. Now you're gonna
Elaine
make me
took
cry.
me under her wing, and I was not always easy because I was a little experiential ed girl that wanted to go run through the fields in Nepal
I,
or something.
I sometimes had to rein her in just a little, just a
Yeah,
little. Yeah.
but you taught me so much, and you brought Idaho to neuroscience with your model.
Thank you.
Thank God. And we
Yeah.
also brought it to Montana. One of the
Yes.
things that was lost with the tech was regional development, and that bothered me. because we became Mountain Standard Time and everybody can come in with boxes and stuff. And I was, before doing trainings live and I'd meet all my colleagues. So that's something that really makes me go, wow, we should watch this in mental health as it
Well,
goes
and I
on.
think we have to, I think sadly, well, maybe sadly, but I think there is, I think there's going to be hybrids all the time. I think we're still going to
Yes,
do things online, but we can't lose the human touch. I just recently did a trim training in person. I'm going, oh, there's nothing like being in person, being in
totally.
space, because we're designed as human beings for connection and social engagement, like you say. But
Yeah.
anyway, so, okay,
Okay,
but I
so
want to
here we
make sure
go.
we have
I
time.
know
Go
we
ahead.
got, okay,
Yes, let's go.
a few gems. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to mentors like Elaine and all the people that brought me through. A few gems to staying in mental health for 40 years and not burning out. Keep curious, creative, and passionate. How do you do this? Well, if you never spice the stew, it gets really old. Change modalities. Change yourself with mentors who have more depth and wisdom, like Elaine Miller Karras, right? Change your caseload. Learn new things as they come up. See each person who enters your door as someone who wants to get back to well-being. So what's right with them? Begin to search for resources that shine with their souls. Match them, not what you think will shine with their soul. Follow a half step behind. Gather a bouquet of resource flowers. I love flowers. I just went riding through tulips in Holland. Get curious about the client's view of life. Begin to build a strong, positive foundation before decorating the house. I love that analogy, Elaine. Water the flowers, not the weeds, or else you'll get more weeds. Notice when they begin to connect, when there's less inhibition, more spontaneous expression, or notice when a client is becoming more organized, less impulsive, and clear. Teach how our biological systems work and teach how to track the differences between well-being and not. Teach the value of pause and titration. Build community with peers in the profession in person. Have people you can consult with and attend conferences with. Don't go to online trainings and just show your name and not have a face.
Mhm.
Specialize in longer, more in-depth models, expanding a network of professionals and referrals in the U.S. and regional. So long-term models like what Elaine and I did with somatic experiencing. It was 2.5 years, in and out every quarter. COVID taught us that we can reach people on a computer, and it can be very effective reaching folks across the world and in the nation during that time period. Elaine did work with Ukraine. You've done work all over the place. We helped the
Yeah.
nurses. The downside is we lose true connection with in person. Humans are mammals and need one another to survive. Use a hybrid model if needed, but please do not give up in person. Continue to build a community of people now more than ever. We need this. In disasters, computers and phones do not work. We are losing our sense of real-life orientation to threat and safety, relying too much on technology. Something to think about. Almost done. So thank you for picking this profession. To all the professionals that are listening. Thank you for listening to all the non-professionals in this field out of curiosity. It has been incredibly rewarding, never boring, life-changing. All the best. God, I'm going to cry again. I hate crying, Elaine. All the best. And I leave you with this. Resiliency is about being flexible and adaptable to life changes and choosing many pathways, not just one.
Oh, Melissa, thank you so much. I mean, I
Oh,
think
thanks, Elaine.
your wisdom not only for therapists, but really for human beings. Choose
Yeah.
new pathways, learn as much as you can, be curious. This is what I often end the show with, is what else is true.
Yeah.
Because yes, Melissa and I have worked with people that have experienced unimagined losses. And yet we still have, I think I can say this, and please you can say, no, Elaine, that's not true. We still have that sparkle inside of
Yep.
the hope that we also have been given to us by our clients, that I think at times we've helped them see when it was shrouded, that it still existed. So, Melissa, a deep bow to you, and thank you so much for being here today. And to all my listeners, just spend a moment, be curious, take Melissa's advice, and remember what else is true. Remember your strengths and what's helped you during your darkest days, because they can help you again.
Thank you so much, Elaine.
You're welcome. This is Elaine Miller-Karras signing off for Resiliency Within.